Ethan Cole never imagined that a blind date would change his life forever. But when the woman opposite him admitted she was a single mother of two and waiting for him to leave, Ethan did something nobody expected. He stayed, not out of pity, but because he saw himself in her eyes. Two lonely people, two broken hearts, and a single chance to heal. But is love strong enough to mend 5 wounded souls? Follow my story to the end. Like and comment on the city you're viewing to let me know how far this story has come. The restaurant was too nice for Ethan Cole. White tablecloths, candles that actually smelled like something expensive, waiters who refilled water glasses before you even noticed they were empty. He sat near the window, tugging at his collar, wondering for the 10th time why he had agreed to this. "You need to get out," his sister had said 3 weeks ago, cornering him in his own kitchen while his daughter ate cereal at the table. "You've been hiding for 4 years, Ethan. 4 years." "I'm not hiding. I'm raising my kid." "You can do both." He had wanted to argue, but she had already typed a number into his phone and walked out before he could delete it. That was how he ended up here, on a Friday night, waiting for a woman named Ava Bennett, who his sister swore was perfect for him, which meant absolutely nothing because his sister thought everyone was perfect for everyone. Ethan checked his watch. 7:15. She was late. He considered leaving. He could text some excuse, go home, put on sweatpants, and watch a movie with his daughter. That sounded infinitely better than sitting here pretending he knew how to date. Then the door opened. She walked in like she was trying not to be noticed, which made her the only person in the room he actually noticed. Dark hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless, but probably wasn't. A navy dress that was simple and just formal enough. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on him for half a second before moving on, like she wasn't sure or didn't want to be. Ethan raised his hand. She walked over slowly. No smile, no wave. Just a woman who looked like she had also been talked into this by someone who wouldn't take no for an answer. "Ethan?" she asked. "That's me." She sat down across from him, placing her purse on the chair beside her like she might need a quick escape route. "Ava. Nice to meet you." "Yeah, you too." Silence. Ethan picked up the menu just to have something to do with his hands. She did the same. The waiter appeared, asked if they wanted drinks, and Ava ordered a glass of red wine without looking up. Ethan asked for water. "You don't drink?" she asked after the waiter left. "Not much. Used to. Don't anymore." She nodded, but didn't ask why. He appreciated that. "So," she said, setting the menu down, "how much did your sister beg you to come here?" Ethan almost laughed. "That obvious? Mine cornered me at work. Wouldn't leave until I agreed." "Sounds familiar." Ava leaned back in her chair, and for the first time her shoulders dropped just a little. "I almost didn't show up." "Me too." "Why did you?" Ethan thought about it. "I don't know. Guilt, maybe? Or just tired of saying no to everything." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he felt something shift. Not attraction exactly, though she was striking in a way that made it hard not to stare. It was more like recognition, like she knew exactly what he meant. "I get that," she said quietly. The waiter brought the wine and water, took their orders, and disappeared again. Ava took a sip, then set the glass down and stared at it like it might tell her what to say next. "I'm terrible at this," she admitted. "At what?" "This. Small talk, dates, all of it." "Same." She smiled, just barely. "So what do we do now?" "I don't know. Talk about the weather?" "It's cold." "Yeah." Another silence, but this one didn't feel as heavy. "Okay," Ava said, straightening up like she had made a decision. "Let's just skip the boring stuff. What do you do?" "I'm a project manager, construction company." "You?" "Marketing consultant, freelance mostly." "Do you like it?" She tilted her head. "Some days. Other days I want to throw my laptop out a window. You?" "Same, except it's blueprints instead of a laptop." She almost laughed. He could see it in her eyes, even though the sound didn't quite make it out. "Kids?" she asked, and the question landed between them like a grenade. Ethan hesitated. This was the part where people usually checked out, the part where the interest faded, the excuses started, and the evening ended early. "One?" he said. "A daughter. She's 8. Ava didn't blink, didn't flinch, just nodded. What's her name? Lily. That's pretty. Thanks. He paused. You? Ava looked down at her wine glass, turning it slowly between her fingers. 2. A boy and a girl. 10 and 7. Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. Yeah? Yeah. What are their names? Jake and Sophie. Good names. She looked up at him, and her expression was guarded but not closed. Most guys hear that and suddenly remember they have an early meeting. I'm not most guys. No? No? Ava studied him for a long moment, and Ethan had the feeling she was deciding something important. Whether to stay, whether to trust him, whether this was worth the risk. I'm a single mom, she said finally, her voice steady but careful. Their dad's not in the picture. Hasn't been for 3 years. It's just me and them, and it's a lot, and I'm not going to pretend it's not. Ethan didn't look away. I'm a single dad. My wife died 4 years ago. It's just me and Lily, and yeah, it's a lot. The air between them went still. Ava's eyes widened slightly, and her hand tightened around the stem of her glass. I'm sorry. Me too. About your situation, I mean. It's not the same. No, but it's close enough. She let out a breath, and it sounded like she had been holding it for a very long time. I wasn't expecting this. Neither was I. The waiter brought their food, but neither of them touched it right away. They just sat there, looking at each other like two people who had stumbled into the same shelter during a storm and weren't sure what to do now that they weren't alone anymore. I don't date, Ava said after a while. I haven't since everything. I don't have time. I don't have energy. And honestly, I don't want to drag someone into my mess. It's not a mess. You don't know that. Maybe not. But I know what it feels like to think you're too broken to let anyone in. Her jaw tightened, and for a second Ethan thought he had pushed too far. But then she spoke, and her voice cracked just a little. I'm tired, she said. I'm tired of doing everything alone. I'm tired of pretending I'm fine. I'm tired of my kids asking why we can't have what other families have. She stopped, shaking her head. Sorry, that's too much. It's not. I don't even know you. Then get to know me. Ava looked at him like he was insane. Just like that? Why not? Because people don't just stick around. Not when it's this complicated. I'm still here. You don't know what you're signing up for. Neither do you. She laughed, and this time it was real. Short and sharp and almost bitter, but real. You're either really brave or really stupid. Probably both. She picked up her fork, finally, and took a bite. Ethan did the same. They ate in silence for a while, but it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was the kind of quiet that came when two people were too tired to pretend and too honest to lie. Tell me about Lily, Ava said eventually. Ethan smiled. She's stubborn, smart. Thinks she knows everything, which is terrifying because half the time she actually does. She likes dinosaurs and hates dresses and asks 1,000 questions a day. Sounds exhausting. She is, but she's also the best thing in my life. Ava's expression softened. Jake's the same, except he's obsessed with space, wants to be an astronaut. I keep telling him he has to pass math first. And Sophie? Sophie's my dreamer. She draws constantly, wants to be an artist or a princess or both. She's also the one who asks the hardest questions. Like what? Ava hesitated. Like why we don't have a dad. Ethan set his fork down. What do you tell her? That some families are different, that we have each other and that's enough. Do you believe that? She looked at him, and her eyes were raw. Most days. Ethan understood. He understood more than she probably realized. Lily used to ask about her mom all the time, he said. Every night before bed. Where is she? When is she coming back? Does she still love me? And I didn't know how to answer because I didn't know how to explain death to a 4-year-old. What did you say? That her mom loved her more than anything. That she didn't want to leave. That sometimes bad things happen and we don't get to choose them. Did she accept that? Eventually, but she still asks sometimes, and it still breaks me every time. Ava reached across the table, and before Ethan realized what was happening, her hand was on his. Warm, steady, real. I'm sorry, she said again, and this time it sounded different. Not polite, not distant. Just true. Me too. They sat like that for a moment, hands touching across a table in a restaurant full of strangers. Two people who had been surviving alone for so long they had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Ava pulled her hand back slowly, but the warmth stayed. "So what now?" she asked. "I don't know. What do you want?" She thought about it, really thought about it, and when she spoke, her voice was careful but hopeful. "I want to not feel like I'm drowning all the time. I want my kids to be happy. I want to believe that maybe there's something better than just surviving." "Yeah, me too. But I don't know if I'm ready." "For what?" "For this, for someone, for the risk." Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his voice low and honest. "I'm not asking you to be ready. I'm just asking you to not walk away yet." Ava stared at him, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes. Fear and hope and exhaustion and something that looked a lot like longing. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay? Okay. I won't walk away yet." Ethan smiled, and it felt like the first real smile he had managed in years. Good. They finished dinner, talked about work, about their kids' schools, about the ways they had learned to stretch groceries and time and patience. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't magical, it was just two tired people being honest with each other, and somehow that felt like more than Ethan had hoped for. When the check came, they split it without arguing. When they walked outside, the air was cold and sharp, and Ava pulled her coat tighter around herself. "Can I walk you to your car?" Ethan asked. "Sure." They walked in silence, their breath visible in the night air. When they reached her car, Ava turned to face him, her keys in her hand. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not running." "You didn't either." "No, I didn't." She unlocked her car but didn't get in, just stood there looking at him like she was trying to figure out if this was real or if she was going to wake up tomorrow and realize it had all been a mistake. "Can I see you again?" Ethan asked. Ava bit her lip. "I don't know." "That's not a no. It's not a yes either." "I'll take it." She almost smiled. "You're persistent." "I've been told." "By who?" "My daughter, my sister, pretty much everyone who knows me." This time she did smile, and it was small but genuine. "I'll think about it." "Okay." "Okay." She got into her car and Ethan stepped back. She started the engine and he thought that was it, that she would drive away and he would never hear from her again. But then she rolled down the window. "Ethan?" "Yeah?" "I had a good time. I didn't think I would, but I did." "Me too." She nodded, then rolled the window back up and drove away. Ethan stood in the parking lot for a long time after she left, his hands in his pockets, his breath clouding in the cold. He didn't know what was going to happen, didn't know if she would call or text or disappear completely. But for the first time in 4 years, he felt something other than numb. He felt hope. 3 days passed. Ethan didn't text, didn't call. He had meant what he said about not pushing, and he wasn't going to be the guy who couldn't take a hint. But he thought about her, more than he wanted to admit. He thought about the way she had looked at him when he said he was still here, the way her hand had felt on his, the way she had smiled, just barely, like she had forgotten how and was trying to remember. On the 4th day, his phone buzzed while he was making lunch for Lily. Unknown number. He opened the message. "This is Ava." I thought about it. Ethan stared at the screen, and 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I'd like to see you again." "If you still want to," he typed back immediately. "I do." "When?" "Whenever works for you." Another pause. "Saturday? Afternoon? Somewhere kid-friendly, maybe. I don't have a sitter." Ethan's heart kicked up. "I can bring Lily. If that's okay." "It's okay. I think." "You think?" "I don't know. This is new for me." "Me too." "Okay, let's try. Let's try." They agreed on a park. 2 o'clock. Neutral ground. Ethan told Lily they were meeting a friend and her kids. He didn't say more than that, didn't want to make it bigger than it needed to be yet. Lily just shrugged and asked if there would be swings. "Probably." "Okay." Saturday came fast. Ethan dressed Lily in her favorite hoodie, the one with the dinosaur on it, and told her to wear sneakers instead of the light-up shoes she loved, because the park would be muddy. "Who's this friend?" Lily asked in the car. "Her name's Ava. She has 2 kids, a boy and a girl." "Are they nice?" "I think so. I haven't met them yet." Lily frowned. "Then how do you know she's your friend?" Ethan didn't have a good answer for that. "I just do." "That's weird." "Yeah, maybe." They pulled into the parking lot and Ethan saw Ava's car already there. His stomach tightened. Lily unbuckled herself and hopped out, running toward the swings before Ethan could stop her. He followed, scanning the park until he saw Ava standing near a bench, her hands in her coat pockets, watching 2 kids on the slide. She saw him and waved. Ethan walked over, his heart pounding harder than it had any right to. "Hey," he said. "Hey." She looked nervous. He probably did too. "These are mine," Ava said, gesturing toward the slide. A boy with dark hair and a serious expression came down first, followed by a girl with pigtails who was laughing so hard she almost fell off the end. "Jake, Sophie, come here for a second." They ran over, and Ava crouched down to their level. "This is my friend Ethan, and that's his daughter Lily." Lily had circled back and was standing next to Ethan now, half hiding behind his leg. Jake stared at Ethan like he was deciding whether or not to trust him. Sophie just waved. "Hi," Sophie said. "Hi," Lily said back, barely audible. "You want to go play?" Sophie asked. Lily looked up at Ethan. He nodded. "Okay." Sophie grabbed Lily's hand and dragged her toward the swings. Jake followed after a moment, still looking skeptical. Ethan and Ava stood there, watching them. "Well," Ava said, "that went better than I expected." "Yeah, Sophie's never met a stranger. Jake's the opposite. Lily's shy. Takes her a while to warm up." "They'll figure it out." Ethan hoped so. They sat down on the bench, close enough to watch the kids, but far enough to talk without being overheard. Ava pulled her coat tighter around herself, even though it wasn't that cold. "I almost canceled this morning," she admitted. "Why didn't you?" "I don't know. I kept thinking about what you said, about not walking away yet. I'm glad you didn't." She looked at him. "Are you sure about this, Ethan? Because once the kids are involved, it's different. It's not just us anymore." "I know." "Do you? Because Jake's going to ask questions, Sophie's going to get attached. And if this doesn't work, they're the ones who get hurt." Ethan turned to face her fully. "I'm not going to hurt them, or you." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to." Ava's eyes searched his, looking for cracks, for lies, for anything that would give her a reason to run. She didn't find it. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." They sat in silence for a while, watching Lily and Sophie take turns pushing each other on the swings while Jake climbed up the slide the wrong way. "They're good kids," Ethan said. "So's yours." She likes Sophie. "Sophie likes everyone. It's a problem sometimes." Ethan smiled. "Lily's the opposite. She's picky." "About people?" "About everything." Ava laughed, and the sound was lighter than it had been at the restaurant, less guarded. "This is weird," she said. "What is?" "This? Sitting here, watching our kids play, pretending like we know what we're doing. We don't have to pretend. Then what do we do?" Ethan thought about it. "We just keep showing up." Ava looked at him, and something in her expression shifted, softened. "Yeah, okay." The afternoon stretched on. The kids played, fell, got up, played some more. Jake eventually warmed up enough to show Lily how to climb the monkey bars. Sophie tried to teach Ethan a clapping game and gave up after 2 rounds because he was terrible at it. When the sun started to dip and the air got colder, Ava called her kids over. "We should go," she said. "It's almost dinner." Jake and Sophie groaned but came anyway. Lily looked disappointed. "Can we do this again?" Sophie asked, looking at Ava. "Maybe." "Please?" Ava glanced at Ethan. He nodded. "Yeah," Ava said. "We can do this again." Sophie grinned. Jake just shrugged, but Ethan caught him looking at Lily like maybe she wasn't so bad after all. They walked back to the parking lot together, the kids running ahead. "Thank you," Ava said when they reached her car. "For what?" "For this. For being patient, for not making me feel crazy." "You're not crazy. I feel like I am sometimes." "Yeah, me too." She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that reached her eyes this time. Text me? She asked. I will. Promise? Promise. She got her kids into the car, buckled them in, and waved before driving off. Ethan stood there with Lily, watching the taillights disappear. I like Sophie, Lily said. Yeah? Yeah. She's funny. Good. Are we going to see them again? Ethan looked down at his daughter, at her hopeful eyes, and realized how much was riding on his answer. Yeah, he said. I think we are. Lily smiled, and Ethan felt that flicker of hope grow just a little bit stronger. The text started small. Good morning messages. Photos of the kids doing something funny. Questions about whether Sophie's obsession with glitter was normal, or if Ava should be concerned. Ethan sent a picture of Lily covered in dirt after attempting to dig to china in the backyard. Ava responded with a photo of Jake's failed science experiment that had somehow turned the kitchen table blue. It was easy. Easier than Ethan had expected. They didn't talk about the heavy stuff, not yet. Just the daily chaos of raising kids alone and trying not to lose their minds in the process. 2 weeks after the park, Ava called him at 9 at night. Ethan was sitting on the couch, half watching a movie he'd seen 3 times, when his phone lit up. Hey, he said. Hey, is this a bad time? No, Lily's asleep. What's up? There was a pause, and he could hear something in the background. Running water, maybe. Dishes clinking. I just needed to hear another adult voice, Ava said finally. It's been one of those days. What happened? Nothing big, just a lot of little things. Sophie lost her favorite stuffed animal and had a meltdown. Jake got in trouble at school for arguing with his teacher about black holes. I had a client call to tell me they're cutting my contract in half. And then I burned dinner and had to order pizza, which I can't really afford right now but didn't have the energy to fight about. Ethan could hear the exhaustion in her voice, the kind that came from holding everything together with duct tape and willpower. That sounds like a terrible day, he said. It was, but it's over now. The kids are in bed, the dishes are almost done, and I have half a bottle of wine left, so there's that. You drinking alone? Is that judgment I hear? No, just asking, she sighed. Yeah, I'm drinking alone, in my kitchen, while scrubbing mac and cheese off a pan, living the dream. Ethan smiled despite himself. You want company? You offering? I could be there in 20 minutes. Ava went quiet. He could almost hear her thinking, weighing the risk against the loneliness. You don't have to do that, she said. I know. It's late. I'm aware. And I look like a disaster. I don't care. Another pause, longer this time. Okay, Ava said softly. Come over. Ethan was up before she finished the sentence. He checked on Lily, still asleep, curled up with her dinosaur blanket. He texted his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who had told him 100 times to call if he ever needed anything. She was over in 5 minutes, waving him off before he could even finish explaining. He drove to Ava's place with the kind of nervous energy that felt ridiculous for a man his age. It was just a visit, just 2 friends hanging out after a bad day. Nothing more, except it didn't feel like nothing. Ava's apartment was on the 2nd floor of an older building, the kind with uneven steps and a door that stuck when it rained. She opened it before he could knock, standing there in sweatpants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Hi, she said. Hi. You actually came. I said I would. She stepped aside to let him in. The apartment was small but warm. Toys scattered across the living room floor. Drawings taped to the walls. A stack of laundry on the couch that she quickly moved to the side. Sorry about the mess, Ava said. I wasn't exactly expecting company. It's fine. You should see my place. Worse than this? Way worse. She smiled, and some of the tension in her shoulders eased. You want some wine? Or I have beer, I think. Somewhere. Wine's good. She poured 2 glasses and handed him one. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the laundry basket between them like a buffer. So, Ethan said. Black holes? Ava laughed, short and sharp. Jake's teacher said the sun is the biggest star in the universe. Jake corrected her, told her about VY Canis Majoris or something like that. She didn't appreciate it. He was right, though. I know, but try explaining to a 10-year-old that being right doesn't always matter. Ethan took a sip of wine. It was cheap and a little bitter, but he didn't mind. Lily does the same thing. She told her teacher that dinosaurs didn't actually roar because we have no idea what they sounded like. Was she wrong? No, but her teacher wasn't thrilled. Ava shook her head. Why are smart kids so exhausting? Because they don't know when to stop. Exactly. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, drinking wine and listening to the distant hum of the refrigerator. Can I ask you something? Ava said eventually. Sure. Why did you come over tonight? Ethan thought about it. He could give her the easy answer, the polite one, but she had been honest with him from the start, and he owed her the same. Because I know what it's like to have a terrible day and not have anyone to talk to about it, he said. And because I didn't want you to be alone if you didn't have to be. Ava looked at him, and her eyes were softer than he'd ever seen them. You're a good person, Ethan. I'm really not. You are. You just don't see it. He didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything, just took another sip of wine and let the moment sit. Tell me about your wife, Ava said quietly. Ethan's chest tightened. What do you want to know? Anything, everything, I don't know. He set his glass down and leaned back against the couch. Her name was Claire. We met in college. Got married too young, probably, but it worked. She was funny and stubborn and terrible at cooking, but tried anyway. She loved Lily more than anything in the world. How did she die? Car accident. Someone ran a red light. She was gone before the ambulance got there. Ava's hand moved toward his, then stopped, hovering in the space between them. I'm so sorry. It was 4 years ago. I should be over it by now. You don't get over something like that. No, I guess you don't. Ava picked up her wine glass and drained it. Jake and Sophie's dad didn't die. He just left. Woke up one morning and decided he didn't want to be a father anymore. Packed a bag and walked out. Haven't heard from him since. Ethan felt a surge of anger on her behalf. That's worse. Is it? At least Claire didn't choose to leave. Your ex did. He looked at you and those kids and decided they weren't worth staying for. Ava's jaw tightened. Yeah, he did. He's an idiot. She almost smiled. Maybe, but it still hurts. Not for me. I'm past that. But for them. Sophie doesn't remember him much, but Jake does. And every time he sees a dad at school drop-off or a father-son event, I can see it on his face. That question, why wasn't I enough? Ethan's throat felt tight. Lily asks me that too. About her mom. Why did she have to go? Why didn't she stay? And I don't have an answer that makes it better. No, there isn't one. They sat there, two broken people holding the pieces of their lives together with sheer stubbornness, and for the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel so alone. I'm glad you're here, Ava said. Me too. She leaned her head back against the couch and closed her eyes. I'm exhausted. I can go. No, stay, just for a little while. So he did. They talked about everything and nothing, about their kids' weird habits and their own terrible coping mechanisms, about how neither of them had slept through the night in years, about how sometimes they forgot what it felt like to be anything other than a parent. At some point, Ava's head ended up on his shoulder. She didn't say anything about it, and neither did he. It just happened, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Ethan? She said after a while, her voice drowsy. Yeah? Thank you for not running. I'm not going to. You say that now. I mean it. She didn't respond, and when he looked down, her eyes were closed, her breathing slow and even. She had fallen asleep. Ethan sat there, not moving, not wanting to wake her. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of traffic outside. He thought about leaving, about slipping out and letting her wake up alone, but he couldn't do it. Couldn't walk away from someone who had finally let her guard down long enough to rest, so he stayed, pulled a blanket off the back of the couch, and draped it over her. Let her sleep while he sat there in the dark, watching headlights move across the ceiling, thinking about how strange and terrifying it was to care about someone again. When Ava woke up an hour later, disoriented and embarrassed, Ethan just smiled and told her it was fine. She walked him to the door, her cheeks flushed, and thanked him again. I'll call you tomorrow, she said. Okay. I mean it. I know. She closed the door behind him, and Ethan walked back to his car feeling like something had shifted. Something important. The next morning, Ava texted him before he even had his coffee. "I fell asleep on you. I'm mortified." "Don't be. You needed it." "Still, that's embarrassing." "It's not. You're being nice. I'm being honest." A pause. "Can I make it up to you?" "You don't have to." "I want to." "Dinner, my place. Friday. I'll actually cook this time." Ethan smiled at his phone. "You sure?" "Positive." "Bring Lily. The kids can hang out." "Okay. What time? 6? We'll be there." Friday came faster than Ethan expected. He spent the afternoon trying to figure out what to bring and eventually settled on flowers and a bottle of wine that cost more than he usually spent but felt appropriate. Lily picked out a picture she had drawn for Sophie, a chaotic mess of colors that was supposed to be a rainbow but looked more like a scribble. "She'll love it," Ethan said. "You think?" "I know." They showed up at 6 on the dot. Ava opened the door wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair down for once, and Ethan forgot how to breathe for a second. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Lily pushed past him and ran inside, already looking for Sophie. Jake appeared in the hallway, and the two of them eyed each other like cautious animals before Jake asked if Lily wanted to see his rock collection. She said yes, and they disappeared into his room. "Rock collection?" Ethan asked. "Don't ask. He has 73 of them. I counted." "That's a lot of rocks." "Tell me about it." Ava took the flowers and wine, her cheeks turning pink. "You didn't have to bring anything." "I wanted to." She put the flowers in a vase and set them on the kitchen table. The apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes, and Ethan's stomach growled. "What are you making?" he asked. "Pasta. Nothing fancy, but I didn't burn it this time, so that's progress." "I'm sure it's great. You haven't tasted it yet." "I'm optimistic." She laughed, and it sounded lighter than it had before, less guarded. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. The kids argued about who got to sit where. Sophie spilled her juice twice. Jake interrogated Ethan about whether he thought Mars could support human life. Lily told a long, meandering story about a turtle she saw at school that may or may not have been real. Ava looked overwhelmed but happy, and Ethan realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this normal, this whole. After dinner, the kids convinced them to play a board game, which turned into 2 board games, which turned into Jake accusing Sophie of cheating and Sophie crying until Ava bribed her with cookies. When it was finally time to go, Lily didn't want to leave. She clung to Sophie like they were being separated forever, and Sophie clung right back. "We'll see each other again soon," Ava promised. "When?" Sophie demanded. Ava looked at Ethan. "Next weekend?" "Yeah, next weekend." They managed to pry the girls apart, and Ethan carried a half-asleep Lily to the car. Ava walked them out, her arms crossed against the cold. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for having us." "The kids had fun." "So did I." She smiled, and in the glow of the porch light, she looked younger, less tired. "Me too." Ethan wanted to kiss her. The thought hit him out of nowhere, and he shoved it down hard. Not yet. Not now. Not when things were finally going right. "I'll call you," he said instead. "Okay." "I mean it." "I know." He got in the car and drove home, and when he looked in the rearview mirror, Lily was already asleep, her drawing for Sophie clutched in her hand. The weekends turned into a routine. They traded off houses, traded off cooking, traded off the chaos of managing 3 kids who were slowly becoming friends. Jake warmed up to Ethan, asking him questions about construction and whether he thought buildings could withstand earthquakes. Sophie adored Lily, and Lily, who had always been slow to trust, adored her back. But it wasn't perfect. There were hard days. Days when the kids fought, and Ava snapped at Sophie for something small and then apologized with tears in her eyes. Days when Ethan felt the weight of Claire's absence so heavily he could barely function. Days when they both wondered if they were doing the right thing or just making everything more complicated. One night, 3 months in, Ava called him crying. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked, his heart pounding. "It's nothing. I'm fine." "You're not fine. Talk to me." She let out a shaky breath. "Sophie asked me today why you're not her dad." Ethan went still. "What did you say?" "I told her you're a very good friend, that we care about each other, that you care about her and Jake, But she didn't understand. She wanted to know why you can't just be her dad if you're already acting like one. Ethan didn't know what to say. I don't know how to do this, Ethan, Ava continued, her voice breaking. I don't know how to explain to my 7-year-old that the world doesn't work the way she wants it to, that people don't just become family because we want them to. Ava, and the worst part is, I want it too. I want you to be that person for them, for me. But I'm terrified. Because what if this doesn't work? What if we try and it falls apart, and my kids lose you the same way they lost their dad? Ethan's chest ached. I'm not him. I know, but it still scares me. It scares me too. She went quiet. Can I come over? Ethan asked. It's late. I don't care. Ethan, I'm coming over. He hung up before she could argue. Called Mrs. Chen again, who showed up in her bathrobe and told him to take his time. He drove to Ava's apartment faster than he should have, his hands gripping the steering wheel, his mind racing. When he got there, Ava opened the door with red eyes and a tissue in her hand. You didn't have to come, she said. Yeah, I did. He stepped inside and pulled her into his arms before she could say anything else. She stiffened for a second, then melted into him, her face pressed against his chest, her hands clutching the back of his shirt. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. I'm a mess. So am I. They stood there at the doorway, holding each other like they were the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath them. I don't want to lose you, Ava said. You're not going to. You don't know that. No, but I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to. She pulled back just enough to look at him, her eyes searching his. Do you mean that? Every word. Ava's breath hitched, and then she kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't smooth, just a desperate, aching kiss that tasted like tears and hope and everything they had been too scared to say out loud. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. I'm sorry, Ava said again. Stop apologizing. Ethan kissed her again, softer this time, and she stopped talking. I care about you, he said when they broke apart. I care about your kids. And I know this is messy and complicated and terrifying, but I'm not running. I'm here. And I'm going to keep being here until you believe it. Ava's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she was smiling. Okay. Okay? Okay? They sat on the couch, tangled up in each other, and talked until the sun started to rise. About what they wanted, about what scared them, about how to tell the kids without making promises they couldn't keep. When Ethan finally left, the sky was pink and gold, and Ava stood in the doorway watching him go. Ethan? She called. He turned. I love you. The words hit him like a freight train. I love you too, he said, and he meant it more than he had ever meant anything in his life. He drove home with his heart pounding and his hands shaking, and when he walked through the door, Mrs. Chen took one look at his face and smiled. About time, she said. Ethan just laughed. The confession changed things, but not in the way Ethan expected. It didn't make everything easier. It made everything more real, which meant it also made everything scarier. They started seeing each other more intentionally, not just park visits and chaotic dinners with the kids running circles around them. Actual dates, coffee on Saturday mornings while the kids were at activities, lunch breaks stolen in the middle of the workday, phone calls that stretched past midnight when neither of them could sleep. But the kids noticed. Of course they did. Lily asked one morning while Ethan was making her breakfast, Is Ava your girlfriend? Ethan nearly dropped the spatula. What? You heard me. I don't know, maybe. Why? Lily shrugged, pushing her scrambled eggs around her plate. You smile a lot when she texts you. You didn't used to smile like that. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet. Ethan sat down across from her. Do you like Ava? Yeah, she's nice. And Jake and Sophie? Sophie's my best friend. Jake's okay. He knows a lot about rocks. So if Ava and I kept seeing each other, you'd be okay with that? Lily looked up at him, her eyes too old for an 8-year-old. Are you going to marry her? I don't know. We're not there yet. But you might? Maybe, someday. Would that bother you? Lily thought about it for a long time, longer than Ethan was comfortable with. I don't want a new mom. The words hit him harder than he expected. Ava wouldn't replace your mom. No one could. Then what would she be? Ethan didn't have a good answer. I don't know. Someone who cares about you, someone who wants to be part of our lives. Like family? Yeah, like family. Lily went back to her eggs. Okay. Okay? Yeah, but if she's mean to you, I'm going to tell her to leave. Ethan smiled despite the ache in his chest. Deal. Ava had a similar conversation with her kids, though hers went worse. Jake didn't say much, just nodded when she told him that she and Ethan were dating. But Sophie had questions, a lot of questions. Does this mean Ethan's going to live with us? Sophie asked. No, not right now. But later? I don't know, sweetheart. Is Lily going to be my sister? Maybe. Someday. I want her to be my sister now. It doesn't work like that. Why not? Ava rubbed her temples, exhausted before 9 in the morning. Because people need time to figure things out, to make sure it's the right decision. Do you love him? Ava froze. She hadn't told the kids yet. Hadn't wanted to say it out loud until she was sure they could handle it. Yes, she said finally. I do. Sophie grinned. Good. He's nice, and he brings us cookies. That's not why you love someone. I know, but it helps. Jake, who had been quiet the whole time, finally spoke. What if he leaves? Ava's stomach dropped. He's not going to leave. You don't know that. Jake, Dad left. You said he wouldn't, but he did. So how do you know Ethan won't do the same thing? Ava knelt down in front of him, taking his face in her hands. Ethan is not your father. He's nothing like him. You don't know that either. I do. Because I've seen him show up every single time, even when it's hard, even when it would be easier to walk away. He doesn't run, Jake. That's the difference. Jake's jaw tightened, and Ava could see the war happening behind his eyes, the part of him that wanted to believe her and the part that was too scared to try. Okay, he said finally, pulling away. But I'm watching him. That's fair? Jake left the room, and Ava sat on the floor staring at the wall, wondering if she was doing the right thing or just setting everyone up for another heartbreak. 2 weeks later, everything fell apart. It started with Sophie getting sick, a fever that spiked to 103 in the middle of the night. Ava gave her medicine, put a cold cloth on her forehead, and stayed up until 4 in the morning making sure she didn't get worse. Then Jake woke up the next morning complaining that his stomach hurt. By noon, he was throwing up. Ava called in sick to work, which she couldn't afford to do because she was already behind on 2 projects. She spent the day running between bedrooms, cleaning up messes, checking temperatures, and trying not to lose her mind. Ethan texted her around 3. How's your day? Terrible. Both kids are sick. I haven't slept. I'm drowning. You need help? I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Ava stared at her phone, torn between pride and desperation. She had spent years doing this alone. Years proving she didn't need anyone. But she was so tired. And the idea of not being alone, even for a few hours, was almost too tempting to resist. Okay. If you're sure, I'll be there in an hour. Ethan showed up with soup, crackers, ginger ale, and a bag full of medications he wasn't sure she needed but brought anyway. Lily was with him, clutching a stuffed animal she insisted Sophie would want. You didn't have to bring her, Ava said, opening the door. She wanted to come. Said Sophie needs moral support. Sophie's contagious. Lily's had every illness known to man. She'll be fine. Ava stepped aside to let them in, and the apartment looked worse than it had in months. Dishes in the sink, laundry everywhere, toys scattered across the floor. She felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. Sorry about the mess, she said. Ava, I don't care about the mess. Where are the kids? Sophie's in her room. Jake's in the bathroom. Ethan set the bags down and rolled up his sleeves. Okay, you go check on Jake. I'll handle Sophie. Lily, you good hanging out in the living room for a bit? Lily nodded and plopped down on the couch with her book. Ava wanted to argue, to tell him she had it under control, but she didn't, because she didn't have it under control. She was barely holding on. She found Jake sitting on the bathroom floor, pale and miserable. Hey, buddy, she said softly. You okay? I threw up again. I know. You want to lie down? My stomach hurts. I'll get you some medicine. She helped him to his room, got him settled, and gave him a small dose of the anti-nausea medication the pediatrician had prescribed months ago for situations like this. Jake curled up under his blankets and closed his eyes, and Ava sat on the edge of his bed, stroking his hair until his breathing evened out. When she came back to the living room, Ethan was sitting on the floor next to Sophie's bed, reading her a story. Sophie was half asleep, her stuffed animal tucked under her arm, her fever finally starting to break. Ava stood in the doorway and watched, her throat tight. Ethan finished the story and looked up, noticing her. He stood carefully, tucking the blanket around Sophie, and walked over. "She's doing better," he said quietly. "Fever's down. She drank some ginger ale." "Thank you. You don't have to thank me." "I do. You didn't have to come over. You didn't have to help." Ethan looked at her like she was speaking a different language. "Ava, where else would I be?" She didn't have an answer for that. They went back to the living room, where Lily had moved on to coloring. Ethan started cleaning up without asking, washing dishes, folding laundry, picking up toys. Ava watched him, too tired to argue, too overwhelmed to do anything but sit on the couch and try not to cry. "You don't have to do all that," she said eventually. "I know. I can handle it." "I know that too, but you don't have to handle it alone." Ava's vision blurred and she realized she was crying, not loud, messy sobs, just quiet tears that she didn't have the energy to stop. Ethan noticed. Of course he did. He left the dishes and sat down next to her, pulling her into his arms. "I'm so tired," she whispered. "I know. I can't do this anymore." "You're doing fine." "I'm not. I'm barely keeping it together." "Then let me help you keep it together." She pulled back, looking at him through tear-blurred eyes. "Why? Why what? Why are you doing this? Why are you here? Why are you sticking around when it's this hard?" Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Because I love you. And because this is what you do when you love someone. You show up. Even when it's messy. Even when it's hard. You show up." Ava broke then. Really broke. And Ethan just held her while she cried. Held her while years of exhaustion and fear and loneliness poured out of her. Held her until she had nothing left. When she finally stopped, she felt lighter. Emptier, but lighter. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice hoarse. "Stop apologizing. I'm a disaster. You're human." She almost laughed. "That's generous." "It's true." They sat there for a while, Ava's head on his shoulder, Ethan's arm around her, Lily coloring quietly on the floor. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't perfect. But it was real, and for the first time in a long time, Ava felt like maybe she wasn't carrying everything alone. By the time Ethan left that night, both kids were asleep, the apartment was clean, and Ava felt like she could breathe again. "Thank you," she said at the door. "You already said that." "I mean it." "I know." She kissed him, slow and soft and full of everything she couldn't put into words. "I love you," she said when they pulled apart. "I love you too. Even when I'm a disaster, especially then." She watched him leave, watched him get Lily into the car and drive away, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The next morning, Jake asked her at breakfast, "Is Ethan your boyfriend?" Ava nearly choked on her coffee. "Why do you ask?" "Because he was here last night, and he cleaned the kitchen, and you were crying, and he didn't leave." "Yeah, he's my boyfriend." Jake nodded slowly. "Okay. Just okay?" "He's better than I thought he'd be." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm still watching him, but maybe he's not so bad." Ava smiled despite herself. "That's high praise coming from you." "Don't let it go to your head. Wouldn't dream of it." Things got easier after that. Not perfect, not smooth, but easier. Ethan and Ava started talking about the future, not in vague terms, but in real concrete plans. What it would look like if they took the next step. What it would mean for the kids. The biggest question was where they would live. Ethan's house was bigger, but it was his house. The place he had shared with Claire. The place where Lily had grown up. Asking Ava and her kids to move in felt wrong. Like he was asking them to step into a life that wasn't theirs. Ava's apartment was too small. 3 bedrooms for 5 people wouldn't work. And the building was old, the walls were thin, and the landlord barely fixed anything. They talked about it for weeks, going in circles, unable to find a solution that didn't feel like someone was sacrificing too much. Then one night, lying in bed after the kids were asleep, Ethan said, "What if we got a new place?" Ava turned to look at him. "What?" "A new place. Not mine, not yours. Ours." "You're serious?" "Yeah, I mean, think about it. If we're going to do this, really do this, why not start fresh? Somewhere that's ours from the beginning, somewhere the kids can claim as their own without feeling like they're intruding." Ava sat up, her mind racing. "That's a huge step." "I know. We'd have to find a house, get a mortgage, figure out how to afford it." "We'd figure it out." "And what about the kids? What if they hate it?" "Then we pick a different house." "But Ava, we can't keep living separately forever, not if we're serious about this." She stared at him, her heart pounding. "You really want to do this?" "I really do." "What about Claire?" Ethan went still. "What about her?" "Your house. It's hers. It's where you built your life with her. If you leave, doesn't that feel like you're leaving her behind?" Ethan's throat tightened and he looked away. "I thought about that, a lot. And yeah, it's hard. But Claire's gone, and I can't spend the rest of my life living in the past. I have to move forward, for me, for Lily, for us." Ava reached for his hand. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Okay." "Okay?" "Yeah, let's do it. Let's find a house." They started looking the next week. It was harder than either of them expected. Houses were expensive. The good ones were out of their budget. The affordable ones were falling apart. And every time they thought they found something promising, it would fall through. But then they found it. A 4-bedroom house on the edge of town. Not too big, not too small. A yard for the kids to play in. A kitchen that was outdated but functional. Hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like home. They put in an offer. It was accepted. And just like that, everything became real. The night they signed the paperwork, Ethan and Ava sat in the empty living room of their new house, surrounded by boxes, exhausted and terrified and exhilarated all at once. "We did it," Ava said. "We did. This is insane. Completely." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "What now?" "Now we tell the kids." Ava's stomach twisted. "That's the hard part." "Yeah." They had agreed to tell all 3 kids together. Neutral ground, honest conversation, no sugarcoating. They gathered everyone at the park the next day. Same park where they had met all those months ago. The kids were running around, chasing each other, laughing, and Ethan and Ava sat on the bench watching them. "You ready?" Ethan asked. "No, you?" "Not even a little." "Let's do it anyway." They called the kids over. Lily came running, Sophie right behind her. Jake walked over slowly, suspicious. "What's going on?" Jake asked. Ava took a deep breath. "We need to talk to you guys about something important." Sophie's eyes widened. "Are you getting married?" "Not yet," Ethan said. "But we are making a big change." "What kind of change?" Lily asked. "We bought a house," Ava said. "A new house for all of us." The silence was deafening. "All of us?" Sophie asked. "Like together?" "Yeah, together." Lily's face scrunched up in confusion. "We're moving." "Yes," Ethan said gently. "All of us. To a new place, so we can be a family." Jake's expression darkened. "We're already a family." "I know," Ava said quickly, "but this way, we'd all be under one roof. You'd get to see Lily and Ethan every day. We'd eat dinner together, do homework together, be together." "I don't want to leave our apartment," Jake said, his voice rising. "I know it's scary." "It's not scary. It's stupid." "Jake, no." He stood up, his fists clenched. "You can't just decide this without asking us. It's not fair." "We're asking now," Ethan said calmly. "No, you're telling us there's a difference." Sophie looked between them, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't want to fight." "We're not fighting," Ava said, pulling Sophie onto her lap. "We're just talking." "It sounds like fighting." Lily was quiet, staring at the ground. "Lily?" Ethan said. "What do you think?" She looked up, her eyes wet. "I don't want to leave our house." "I know. Mom's there." Ethan's chest ached. Mom's not in the house, sweetheart. She's in here. He tapped her chest gently. And she goes with you wherever you go. But what if I forget her? You won't, I promise. How do you know? Because I won't let you. Lily started crying and Ethan pulled her into his arms. Sophie was crying too, and Ava held her tight. Jake stood apart from all of them, his arms crossed, his jaw set. This is a lot, Ava said, her voice shaking. We know it's a lot, and we're not asking you to be okay with it right away. We're just asking you to try, to give it a chance. And if we hate it, Jake asked, then we figure it out, together. You keep saying that, together. But it doesn't feel like together. It feels like you're making decisions, and we just have to deal with it. Ava flinched. You're right, and I'm sorry. But Jake, we can't keep living the way we have been. It's not sustainable. And I really think this could be good for all of us. Or it could ruin everything. It could. But what if it doesn't? Jake stared at her, and Ava could see the fear written all over his face, the fear of losing what little stability he had left, the fear of trusting someone new and getting hurt again. What if Ethan leaves? Jake asked quietly, and the question hung in the air like a bomb. Ethan set Lily down gently and walked over to Jake. He knelt in front of him, looking him straight in the eye. I'm not going anywhere, Ethan said. You don't know that. I do. Because I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you and Sophie and your mom every single day. That's what family is, Jake. It's not about blood. It's not about obligation. It's about showing up and choosing each other, even when it's hard. Jake's lip trembled. My dad chose to leave. I know, and I'm sorry, but I'm not your dad, and I'm not leaving. You promise? I promise. Jake stared at him for a long moment, and then, slowly, he nodded. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. And for now, that was enough. The move happened in stages. First, they let the kids see the house. Empty rooms, echoing floors, windows that let in too much light. Sophie ran through every room squealing, claiming the one with the window seat as hers before anyone could argue. Lily wandered slowly, touching the walls like she was afraid they might disappear. Jake stayed outside, sitting on the porch steps, refusing to come in. Ethan found him there 20 minutes later. You gonna stay out here all day? Ethan asked. Jake shrugged. Mind if I sit? Another shrug. Ethan sat down anyway, leaving space between them. They watched a bird hop across the yard, pecking at something in the grass. I know this is hard, Ethan said. You don't know anything. You're right. I don't know what it's like to be you, but I do know what it's like to lose something and be scared of losing more. Jake picked at a piece of peeling paint on the step. This isn't my house. Not yet. It's never going to be. Why not? Because it's not ours. It's yours and Mom's. We're just living in it. Ethan considered that. What would make it yours? Jake looked at him like it was a trap. I don't know. Then let's figure it out. You want to paint your room? Pick the color. You want to set up your rocks a certain way? Do it. You want to claim the basement for science experiments? It's yours. You're just saying that. I'm not. This house doesn't mean anything to me yet either, Jake. It's just walls and floors. But if we make it ours together, all of us, then maybe it becomes something. Jake was quiet for a long time. Then, so quietly, Ethan almost missed it. Can I really have the basement? Yeah, you really can. Jake nodded, and something in his posture shifted. Not acceptance exactly, but maybe the beginning of it. Inside, Sophie was trying to convince Lily that they should share a room. We could have bunk beds, Sophie said, her eyes shining. And we could stay up late and tell stories, and it would be so fun. Lily looked uncertain. I don't know. Please? We're basically sisters anyway. We're not sisters. Not yet, but we will be. Ava, standing in the doorway, felt her throat tighten. She caught Ethan's eye across the room, and he looked just as wrecked as she felt. How about this? Ava said, stepping in. You each get your own room, but if you want to have sleepovers, you can. Best of both worlds. Sophie pouted, but agreed. Lily looked relieved. They spent the next few weeks packing. It was chaos. Ethan's house had 4 years of accumulated life. Ava's apartment had 7 years of cramming too much into too little space. They threw out bags of trash, donated boxes of clothes the kids had outgrown, and argued about whether they needed 3 toasters. We don't need 3 toasters, Ava said. But they all work, Ethan argued. That's not the point. Then what is the point? That we're not a toaster museum. Ethan laughed and Ava threw a dish towel at him. Lily watched them from the kitchen table, a small smile on her face. You guys are weird. Yeah, Ethan said. We are. The day of the actual move was a disaster. The moving truck showed up late. It rained. One of the movers dropped a box labeled Fragile, and Ava's favorite mug shattered into pieces on the driveway. Jake stepped in a puddle and tracked mud through the entire first floor. Sophie cried because she couldn't find her stuffed rabbit, which turned out to be in the truck the whole time. By the time everything was inside, Ethan and Ava were exhausted, soaked, and ready to collapse. This was a terrible idea, Ava said, sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes. Yep. We should have just stayed where we were. Probably. I can't feel my legs. Same. Sophie came running in, her rabbit clutched in her arms. I found him. He was in the kitchen box. That's great, sweetheart, Ava said without moving. Can we order pizza? Sure. Can we eat it on the floor? Why not? They ordered 4 pizzas, spread out a blanket in the living room, and ate surrounded by towers of boxes while the kids argued about which room was whose and whether the backyard was big enough for a trampoline. It was loud and messy and nothing like Ethan had imagined, but it was theirs. That night, after the kids were in bed, Ava and Ethan sat on the back porch, too tired to unpack another box. We did it, Ava said. We did. I have no idea what we're doing. Me neither. She leaned her head on his shoulder. What if this doesn't work? Then we'll figure it out. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Ava closed her eyes. I'm terrified. So am I. But you don't look terrified. I'm good at hiding it. She almost laughed. We're a mess. Yeah, but we're a mess together. The first week in the new house was hard. The kids fought over everything. Who got the bathroom first? Whose turn it was to pick the movie? Who left their shoes in the hallway? Jake still refused to unpack most of his boxes, keeping them stacked in the corner of his room like he was ready to leave at any moment. Lily cried herself to sleep twice, whispering that she missed her old house, missed her old room, missed the way things used to be. Ethan sat with her both times, rubbing her back, promising her it would get easier. When? Lily asked. I don't know, but it will. What if it doesn't? Then we'll figure it out. You always say that. Because I mean it. Ava struggled too. The house felt too big, too empty, too unfamiliar. She kept reaching for things that weren't where they used to be, kept forgetting which cabinet held the glasses, kept waking up disoriented, unsure of where she was. And then there were the hard conversations, the ones about boundaries and discipline and whose rules applied when. Ethan thought the kids should make their beds every morning. Ava thought that was a battle not worth fighting. Ava thought the kids should do homework before screen time. Ethan thought they should have some flexibility. They tried to compromise, but compromise was exhausting. One night, 2 weeks in, they had their first real fight. It started over something small. Jake had left his backpack in the middle of the hallway, and Ethan had tripped over it. Jake, you need to put this away, Ethan called upstairs. I will later, Jake called back. No, now. Jake appeared at the top of the stairs, his expression defiant. Why? Because it's a tripping hazard. So step over it. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's not the point. We talked about keeping the common areas clean. You talked about it. I didn't agree to anything. Ava, who had been in the kitchen, came into the hallway. Jake, just move the backpack. Why are you on his side? I'm not on anyone's side. I'm asking you to move your backpack. This is stupid. Jake, no, this whole thing is stupid. I didn't ask to live here. I didn't ask for any of this. He stormed back to his room and slammed the door. Ava closed her eyes, her hands braced on the counter. I'll talk to him. He can't talk to me like that, Ethan said. I know. I'm not trying to be the bad guy here, Ava. I know. Then why does it feel like I am? Ava turned to face him, and she looked as tired as he felt. Because he's testing you. He's waiting for you to prove that you're just like his dad, that you'll give up and leave. I'm not leaving. I know that. But he doesn't. Not yet. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. So what do I do? You keep showing up, you keep being patient, and you let me handle the discipline for now. That's not fair to you. I didn't say it was fair. I said it's what we need to do. Ethan wanted to argue, but he didn't, because she was right. Ava went upstairs to talk to Jake. Ethan could hear their voices through the door, muffled but tense. When Ava came back down 20 minutes later, she looked wrung out. He's not coming down to apologize, she said. I didn't expect him to. He will eventually, but not tonight. Ethan nodded. They stood in the hallway, the space between them feeling wider than it should. This is harder than I thought it would be, Ava admitted. Yeah. Are we making a mistake? I don't know. She looked at him, her eyes searching. That's not reassuring. I don't have reassuring right now. I just have honest. Ava's shoulders sagged. I don't know how to do this, Ethan. I don't know how to blend two families and make it work and keep everyone happy. You can't keep everyone happy. Then what's the point? The point is we try, and we mess up, and we keep trying anyway. I'm so tired of trying. Ethan crossed the space between them and pulled her into his arms. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed into him. I know, he said. Me too. They stood there in the hallway, holding each other, and Ethan realized this was what the rest of their lives would look like. Not perfect moments or easy answers, just two people trying to hold it together and hoping it was enough. Things started to shift slowly. Jake began unpacking his boxes one at a time. He set up his rock collection on a shelf Ethan built for him. He claimed the basement and started a journal documenting every experiment he wanted to try. He still tested Ethan, still pushed boundaries, but the edges of his anger started to soften. Lily stopped crying at night. She and Sophie painted their rooms together, choosing colors that clashed horribly but made them happy. They had sleepovers 3 nights a week, whispering and giggling until Ava or Ethan had to tell them to go to sleep. Sophie started calling Ethan by his first name instead of Mr. Cole, which felt like progress. And slowly, the house started to feel less like a collection of strangers and more like something that resembled a family. But the biggest test came on a Saturday morning 6 weeks after the move. Ethan woke up to the sound of shouting. He bolted out of bed and ran downstairs to find Jake and Lily in the middle of the living room, both of them red-faced and furious. You can't just take my stuff, Lily screamed. It was just sitting there, Jake shot back. That doesn't mean it's yours. What's going on? Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice calm. He took my markers, Lily said, her voice shaking. The ones my mom gave me. Ethan's stomach dropped. The markers were special. Claire had bought them for Lily a week before she died, and Lily guarded them like treasure. Jake, did you take her markers? Ethan asked. I was just borrowing them. You didn't ask. I didn't think it was a big deal. It is a big deal, Lily said, tears streaming down her face. Those were my mom's. You can't just take them. Jake's face went white. I didn't know. Well, now you do. Ava appeared in the doorway, Sophie behind her. What's happening? Jake took Lily's markers, Ethan said. Ava looked at Jake. Is that true? I didn't know they were special, Jake said, his voice defensive. She has 1 million markers. I didn't think she'd care about these. But I do care, Lily said, her voice breaking. And you should have asked. I'm sorry, Jake said, but it sounded hollow. That's not good enough, Lily said. She grabbed the markers from his hand and ran upstairs. A door slammed. Ava sighed. Jake, go to your room. But now. Jake left, and Sophie stood in the doorway, looking small and scared. Is everyone going to be mad forever? Sophie asked. No, sweetheart, Ava said. Everyone's just figuring out how to live together. It takes time. How much time? I don't know. Sophie nodded and wandered back upstairs. Ethan and Ava stood in the living room, the silence heavy. This isn't working, Ava said. It's been 6 weeks. And they're still fighting, still treating each other like enemies. They're kids. Kids fight. Not like this. Ethan didn't have a response to that. Maybe we rushed this, Ava continued. Maybe we should have waited. Waited for what? I don't know, for them to be ready, for us to be ready. We're never going to be ready. There's no perfect time for this. Then maybe there's no time for this at all. Ethan felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know if this is going to work. So you want to give up? I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? Ava's eyes filled with tears. I'm saying I'm scared. I'm scared we're hurting them more than we're helping them. I'm scared that in trying to build something new, we're destroying what they already had. Ethan wanted to argue, but he couldn't because part of him was scared of the same thing. I'm going to talk to Lily, he said instead. He found her in her room, sitting on her bed, clutching the markers to her chest. Hey, he said softly. She didn't look at him. Can I come in? No response. He sat down on the edge of her bed anyway. I'm sorry about what happened. He shouldn't have taken them. You're right, he shouldn't have. Does he even care? I think he does. He just didn't understand. Lily finally looked at him, her eyes red. I don't like him. You don't have to like him right now. Good, because I don't. Ethan put his arm around her and she leaned into him. I know this is hard. I know it's not what you wanted. I want to go back to our old house. I know. I want things to be the way they were. Me too sometimes. She pulled back, surprised. Really? Yeah, because the way things were was easier. It was just you and me, and I knew how to handle that. But this is messy and complicated, and I don't always know what I'm doing. Then why are we doing it? Ethan thought about how to answer that. Because sometimes the hard thing is the right thing. And because I think if we give it time, this could be really good for all of us. What if it's not? Then we'll figure it out. Lily wiped her eyes. You always say that. Because it's true. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I miss Mom. I know, I miss her too. Do you think she'd be mad at us for moving? Ethan's throat tightened. No, I think she'd want us to be happy. Are you happy? He thought about it. I'm getting there. Me too, kind of, sometimes. That's good enough for now. They sat there for a while and then Lily asked, Do I have to forgive Jake? Not today, but eventually, yeah. Why? Because that's what family does. We're not family. Not yet, but we're trying to be. Lily sighed. This is exhausting. Ethan almost laughed. Tell me about it. Later that afternoon, Ethan knocked on Jake's door. Ava had already talked to him, but Ethan felt like he needed to say something too. Come in, Jake said. Ethan opened the door. Jake was sitting on his bed, his rock collection spread out around him. Hey, Ethan said. Hey, can we talk? Jake shrugged. Ethan sat down in his desk chair. I know you didn't mean to hurt Lily. I said I was sorry. I know, but I don't think you understand why she was so upset. Because they were her mom's. Yeah, and her mom's gone. So those markers are one of the only things she has left that connects her to that. Does that make sense? Jake nodded slowly. I guess. I'm not saying you're a bad kid. I'm saying you made a mistake, and you need to make it right. I already apologized. Apologizing is a start, but you also need to respect her space. Ask before you take things. Think about how your actions affect other people. Jake looked down at his rocks. You sound like my mom. Good, your mom's smart. Jake almost smiled. Yeah, she is. Ethan stood up. You're a good kid, Jake. You're smart and curious and you care about things, but you're also holding on to a lot of anger, and I get that. I really do. But you can't take it out on Lily or Sophie. They didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I. I didn't say you did. I'm just asking you to try. Jake was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Do you really think this is going to work? I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. Are you? Jake looked at him, and for the first time Ethan saw something other than suspicion in his eyes. Yeah, Jake said finally. I guess I am. That night, after dinner, Jake knocked on Lily's door. What do you want? Lily asked. I wanted to say I'm sorry, for real this time. Lily crossed her arms. Okay. I didn't know the markers were from your mom, and I should have asked before I took them. Yeah, you should have. I know, and I won't do it again. Lily studied him. Promise? Promise. She relaxed a little. Okay. Okay. Jake turned to leave, then stopped. Your mom sounds like she was really nice. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. She was. I'm sorry she's gone. Me too. Jake nodded and left. Lily closed the door and sat on her bed, holding the markers, and for the first time since the move, she felt like maybe this could work after all. 3 months in, the house stopped feeling like a battleground and started feeling like something else. Not perfect, not smooth, but livable. The kids developed routines. Jake did his homework at the kitchen table every afternoon, surrounded by library books about astronomy and geology. Sophie and Lily turned the backyard into an elaborate pretend world that changed daily, sometimes a jungle, sometimes a castle, sometimes Mars. They dragged sticks and rocks and old blankets outside and built forts that collapsed in the wind but got rebuilt the next day anyway. Ethan and Ava developed routines too. Saturday mornings were for pancakes, which Ethan made and Ava supervised while drinking coffee and pretending she wasn't watching him mess up the first 3 batches every single time. Sunday nights were for family meetings, which sounded more official than they were. Really, it was just everyone sitting in the living room talking about the week ahead, who needed to be where, who had tests or projects or science fairs. But there were still hard days. Days when the weight of blending 2 grieving families felt impossible. Days when old wounds reopened without warning. It happened on a Tuesday. Lily came home from school quiet, which wasn't unusual, but when Ethan asked her how her day was, she didn't answer, just went straight to her room and closed the door. Ethan found her an hour later, sitting on her bed, staring at a photo of Claire. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting down beside her. "We had to make Mother's Day cards at school today." Ethan's stomach sank. "Oh." "Everyone was drawing their moms, and I didn't know what to do, so I drew Mom, but then Sophie drew Ava, and I felt bad because I don't have a mom to draw who's actually here." Ethan pulled her close. "I'm sorry." "It's not fair." "No, it's not." "Why did she have to die?" It was a question Lily had asked 100 times, and Ethan still didn't have a good answer. "I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes terrible things happen, and we don't get to understand why. Do you think she'd be mad that we live with Ava now?" "No. I think she'd be happy we're not alone anymore." Lily looked up at him, her eyes wet. "But what about Ava? Is she supposed to be my mom now?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Ava's not trying to replace your mom. No one could do that. But she does love you. And if you wanted to think of her as someone who takes care of you, someone who's part of our family, that would be okay. But she's not my mom." "No, she's not." "Then what is she?" Ethan didn't have an answer. "I don't know. What do you want her to be?" Lily thought about it for a long time. "I don't know either." "That's okay. You don't have to figure it out right now." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm tired of everything being complicated." "Yeah, me too." They sat there together, and Ethan wondered if there would ever be a time when loving people didn't also mean carrying so much pain. That night, after the kids were in bed, Ethan told Ava what had happened. "She's struggling," he said, "with Mother's Day coming up, with what you are to her." Ava looked down at her hands. "I don't want to replace Claire." "I know, but I also don't know what I'm supposed to be. I love Lily. I love all of them. But I don't know if I have the right to call myself their mom when I'm not." "You don't have to call yourself anything. You just have to keep showing up." "Is that enough?" "I think so." Ava's eyes filled with tears. "What if it's not? What if I mess this up? What if I say the wrong thing, or push too hard, or not hard enough and I hurt them?" Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "Then you apologize and you try again. That's all any of us can do." "I'm scared I'm not good at this." "You're better than you think." She wiped her eyes. "Jake asked me the other day if you were going to be his dad." Ethan went still. "What did you say?" "I said I didn't know, that it was up to him." She paused. "Was that the right answer?" "I don't know. What did he say?" "He said he'd think about it." Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "That's progress." "Is it?" "Yeah, it is." They sat in the kitchen, holding hands across the table, 2 people trying to figure out how to love children who weren't biologically theirs but felt like theirs anyway. Mother's Day came, and it was messier than anyone wanted. Lily made a card for Ava but hid it in her drawer, too scared to give it. Jake made breakfast with Ethan, burning the eggs but trying anyway. Sophie picked flowers from the backyard and presented them to Ava with a speech about how she was the best mom in the world. Ava cried. Ethan pretended not to notice. They spent the afternoon at the cemetery. Ethan and Lily visited Claire's grave, bringing fresh flowers, sitting in the grass for an hour while Lily told her mom about school and Sophie and the new house. Ethan didn't say much, just sat there, one hand on Lily's shoulder, the other on the headstone, feeling the weight of everything he'd lost and everything he'd found. When they got back, Ava and her kids were on the back porch. Jake was showing Ava a rock he'd found that he swore was a meteorite but was probably just a weird-looking stone. Sophie was demanding they plant a garden. Lily walked up to Ava slowly, the card in her hand. "I made this for you," she said quietly. Ava took it, her hands shaking slightly. She opened it and read the inside, and her eyes immediately filled with tears. It said, "Thank you for taking care of us. You're not my mom, but you're important. Love, Lily." Ava knelt down and pulled Lily into a hug. "Thank you. This means everything." Lily hugged her back, awkward and brief, but real. "You're welcome," Lily whispered. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't a fairy tale moment. But it was a step. And steps mattered. Summer came, and with it, a shift. The kids stopped asking when they were going back to their old houses and started calling this one home. Jake stopped testing Ethan every time he gave a direction. Sophie stopped introducing Lily as her friend and started calling her sister without anyone telling her to. They fought, still, over chores and screen time and who got to sit in the front seat, but the fights didn't feel like battles anymore. Just the normal friction of people learning to live together. One night in July, Ethan found Jake in the basement, setting up an experiment involving vinegar and baking soda. "You're going to make a mess," Ethan said. "I know, that's the point." Ethan sat on the old couch they'd moved down there. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you happy here?" Jake looked up surprised. "Why are you asking?" "Because I want to know." Jake thought about it. "Yeah, I think I am." "Yeah?" "I mean, it's weird. And sometimes I miss our apartment, but this is better. I have more space, and you're not as bad as I thought you'd be." Ethan smiled. High praise. "Don't let it go to your head. Wouldn't dream of it." Jake went back to his experiment, and Ethan watched him, feeling something settle in his chest. Something that felt like peace. "Jake?" Ethan said. "Yeah?" "I'm glad you're here." Jake didn't look up, but his ears turned red. "Yeah, me too." By August, Ethan and Ava started talking about marriage. Not in a vague someday way, but in a real concrete way. "I want to marry you," Ethan said one night after the kids were asleep. Ava looked at him surprised. "You do?" "Yeah, I want to make this official. I want to stand in front of people and promise that I'm choosing you and those kids for the rest of my life." Ava's eyes filled with tears. "That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me." "Is that a yes?" She laughed. "I don't know. You haven't actually asked me yet." Ethan got down on one knee right there in the living room. No ring, no plan, just him and her and the truth. "Ava Bennett, will you marry me?" Ava wiped her eyes, smiling so wide it looked like it hurt. Yes, I'll marry you. He stood up and kissed her, and for the first time in years, the future didn't feel terrifying. It felt possible. But then Ava said, "Wait." Ethan pulled back. "What?" "I want to ask you too." "What?" Ava took his hands in hers. "Ethan Cole, will you marry me?" Ethan started laughing. "We're both proposing." "Why not? This isn't traditional anyway." "Fair point. Yes, I'll marry you." They told the kids the next morning over breakfast. "We have something to tell you," Ava said. Sophie's eyes went wide. "Are you having a baby?" "No," Ethan said quickly. "Definitely not." "Then what?" "We're getting married," Ava said. There was a beat of silence. Then Sophie screamed and jumped out of her chair. "I knew it!" Jake smiled, actually smiled. "Cool." Lily looked between them. "So you're going to be married? Like, officially?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "Does that mean Ava's my stepmom?" "If you want her to be." Lily thought about it. "Can I just call her Ava?" "Of course." "Okay, then, yeah, this is good." Sophie was already planning the wedding. Can I be the flower girl? Can we have a big cake? Can I wear a sparkly dress? Yes to all of that, Ava said, laughing. Jake looked at Ethan. Does this mean you're my stepdad? Ethan's chest tightened. If you're okay with that. Jake nodded slowly. I think I am. Yeah? Yeah. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No tears, no big speeches, just a kid giving permission for the man who had shown up every day to officially be part of his life. And that was enough. They planned a small wedding, backyard, just family, and a few close friends. Nothing fancy. Ava wore a simple white dress. Ethan wore a suit he'd owned for years. The kids stood with them, all three in matching outfits Sophie had picked out. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Sophie shouted, I object to this taking so long. Let's get to the cake. Everyone laughed. Ethan and Ava exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Nothing flowery or poetic, just honest. I promise to show up, Ethan said, every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I promise to love you and your kids like they're mine, because they are. Ava's voice shook. I promise to let you in, to stop trying to do everything alone, to trust that you're not going anywhere. I promise to love you and Lily with everything I have, and I promise to keep choosing this, choosing us, every single day. They kissed, and the kids cheered, and just like that, they were a family. Legally, officially, completely. The reception was chaos. Sophie ate too much cake and threw up in the bushes. Jake got into an argument with a cousin about whether Pluto was a planet. Lily danced with Ethan, standing on his feet like she used to when she was little, and told him she was happy. Yeah? Ethan asked. Yeah, this is good. I think so too. Later that night, after the guests had left and the kids were asleep, Ethan and Ava sat on the back porch, exhausted and happy. We did it, Ava said. We did. I can't believe we actually pulled this off. Which part? The wedding or the whole blended family thing? Both. Ethan pulled her close. We're going to keep pulling it off, one day at a time. You really believe that? Yeah, I do. Ava rested her head on his shoulder. I love you. I love you too. The months that followed weren't perfect. There were still hard days. Days when the kids fought, and Ava cried, and Ethan wondered if they'd made a mistake. Days when grief snuck up on them out of nowhere and knocked them flat. But there were more good days than bad. Days when Jake brought home a science award, and Ethan hung it on the fridge like it was a masterpiece. Days when Sophie performed an entire play she'd written in the living room and forced everyone to watch. Days when Lily crawled into bed between Ethan and Ava during a thunderstorm and fell asleep feeling safe. The house stopped being a collection of rooms and became a home. The kids stopped being Ethan's kid and Ava's kids and became their kids. The family they had built, messy and imperfect and real, became the family they had always needed. One Sunday morning, 6 months after the wedding, Ethan woke up to the sound of laughter. He walked downstairs to find all three kids in the kitchen making pancakes. Jake was reading the recipe out loud. Sophie was pouring way too much batter into the pan. Lily was trying to flip one and failing spectacularly. Ava was sitting at the table, watching them, her coffee in hand. Ethan sat down next to her. What's all this? They wanted to surprise us with breakfast. How's it going? Terribly, but they're having fun. Ethan watched them, his chest full. Yeah, they are. Sophie noticed them and grinned. We're making heart-shaped pancakes. They look more like blobs, Jake said. They're hearts, Sophie insisted. They're blobs. You're a blob. Lily laughed so hard she dropped the spatula. Ethan looked at Ava. This is good. Yeah, it is. I mean it. This. All of it. It's good. Ava's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. I know. They sat there together, watching their kids make a mess of the kitchen, and Ethan realized something. He had spent so long thinking that happiness was something you found, something that happened to you if you were lucky. But it wasn't. Happiness was something you built. Brick by brick, day by day. Through the hard conversations and the messy moments, and the choice to keep showing up even when it would be easier to quit. It was choosing to love people who weren't perfect, choosing to let them love you back, choosing to believe that family wasn't about blood or obligation, but about the people you fought for and fought with and refused to give up on. And sitting there in that chaotic kitchen, surrounded by burnt pancakes and laughter and the family he had built from broken pieces, Ethan finally understood what it meant to be whole. Later that day, they all piled into the car for a trip to the park. The same park where Ethan and Ava had brought the kids on their first real outing together. It felt like a lifetime ago. The kids ran ahead, already arguing about who got the swings first. Ethan and Ava walked slowly, hand in hand. "You ever think about how far we've come?" Ava asked. "All the time." "It's kind of insane." "Yeah. I almost didn't show up to that first date." "I know, you told me." "What if I hadn't?" Ethan stopped walking. "But you did." "I know, but what if I hadn't?" "Then we wouldn't be here." "But we are. So let's not waste time thinking about what ifs." Ava smiled. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being scared." "Me too." They reached the swings, and Sophie was already begging Ethan to push her higher. Jake was challenging Lily to a race across the monkey bars. The world was loud and chaotic and full of noise. And it was perfect, because this was what love looked like. Not quiet or easy or simple, but loud and messy and worth every second of the fight to get here. That night, after the kids were in bed, Ethan stood in the hallway, looking at the photos on the wall. Pictures of all 5 of them. The day they moved in. The wedding. Last Christmas. Sophie's birthday. Jake's science fair. Lily's school play. A whole life captured in frames. Ava came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How lucky I am." "You're not lucky. You worked for this." "We worked for this." "Yeah, we did." They stood there together, and Ethan thought about everything it had taken to get here. The fear and the doubt, and the nights he almost gave up. The moments he thought it would be easier to stay closed off, to protect himself and Lily from more hurt. But he hadn't. He had chosen to risk it. To open his heart to a woman who was just as broken and scared as he was. To let her kids into his life. To trust that love was worth the gamble. And it was. It really was. Somewhere in the house, one of the kids called out for water. Ava sighed and went to handle it. Ethan stayed in the hallway for another moment, looking at the photos, at the proof that broken people could build something beautiful if they were brave enough to try. He thought about Claire. Hoped she would be proud of him. Hoped she would be happy that Lily was happy. That he was happy. He thought about Ava's ex, the man who had walked away from 2 incredible kids and an incredible woman and felt nothing but pity. Because that man would never know what he had missed. And then Ethan stopped thinking about the past and went to help Ava with the kids. Because the past was over. The future was uncertain. But the present, right here, right now, was full of people he loved and who loved him back. And that was everything. Years later, when people asked Ethan how he and Ava made it work, how they blended 2 broken families into something whole, he would tell them the truth. It wasn't magic, it wasn't fate. It was choice. Every single day, choosing to show up, choosing to forgive, choosing to believe that love was stronger than fear. It was fighting for what mattered and letting go of what didn't. It was learning that family wasn't something you were born into, but something you built with intention and effort and an absurd amount of patience. It was accepting that life was never going to be perfect, that there would always be hard days and hurt feelings and moments when everything felt like too much. But it was also learning that imperfect was good enough, that messy was beautiful, that love didn't have to be easy to be real. And in the end, that was the only lesson that mattered, that 5 people who had been surviving alone, each carrying their own grief and fear and broken pieces, had found each other, had chosen each other, had built a life together that was loud and chaotic and imperfect and utterly, completely, beautifully whole. And that was the story, not of a perfect family, but of a real one.